Traders. Today we are talking about the execution gap. It is a big problem for traders, and here's the thing. The execution gap is between knowing what to do and actually doing it. This massive gap opens up, and so you don't follow your trading rules. Why does it happen? Today we're going to talk about why it happens. What is it? And when you understand what it is, you can actually start to find solutions and fix it. We can close this gap. But here's the thing, traders. Most traders, and I'm talking like 95%, most traders do the one thing that actually makes the execution gap worse. The way they try to fix it actually makes it worse. So if you've ever noticed that instead of getting better at trading, you're actually getting worse, you're probably trying to fix this the wrong way. And it's really, it's ironic that the one thing you're trying to do, you're working really hard to fix this, is actually making it worse. And it's pretty sad because the reason this happens is because most traders don't understand why they have an execution gap. So this is a really important webinar. Stick around, watch to the end, because this is what's going to start making the difference in your trading. If you don't fix this, if you don't solve this, and quite frankly, you can't solve it if you don't understand it. If you don't understand the execution gap and why it's happening to you, you will remain stuck and frustrated forever, possibly even quit before you ever figure this out. So watch the full webinar. It won't be very long. I'm going to keep it nice and short and punchy because we need to address what's actually going on. Everything looks great. Technically, I had some issues yesterday, so we were a little bit delayed. Okay, so let's get into it. Before we get to the two things that are actually going on and causing this execution gap. So these are the two things you have to work on and start solving. But before we get to that, let's understand what's actually going on, and let's understand why it's very possible you're doing the one thing that's making the execution gap worse. So the thing we have to understand here, it's a big word, and the big word that all of this execution gap hinges on is safety. The execution gap opens up not because you don't understand your strategy or your strategy is bad or the charts are, the market's against you. It's got nothing to do with charts or the markets. It has to do with safety. The reason you have an expectation gap, the reason you have rules that you understand and you know them and you know what to do, but you just have the inability to do it, is because of a thing called safety. Now, last week, I'm not going to repeat myself, so you're going to have to go and watch the webinar from last week. We talked about inner child things, why this safety, this lack of safety exists, because all of us as adults have an inner child, and that's where psychology really comes from. So the behavioral psychology we have to deal with as traders comes from kind of childhood development growing up. And during that time, a gap opens up. It's called a safety gap. And it's places, times, situations where we don't feel safe. Psychologically, emotionally, we don't feel safe. And safety for us as humans. Now remember, yes, we're humans, but we're biological. We actually are animals as well. So we have to understand our instincts. Just like animals will do things without having to think about it, we also do things without having to think about it. It's called instinct that takes over. You've got very little control once your instinct takes over. And when safety is at risk, now remember, our instinct doesn't know what kind of safety this is. Could it be safety, we don't feel safe, we're going to die? Or is it just that we don't feel safe? We feel a little bit scared about trading. It doesn't know the difference, unfortunately. So instinct kicks in, and you are not feeling safe when you are trading for many reasons. Okay, we're going to get into the two main reasons and the two things you have to fix. But let's first talk about safety, and let's talk about why the one thing you're probably doing is making your execution gap even worse. Why it's making you a worse trader. Okay. Safety is very important for us for survival. We have the strongest survival instinct available. Okay. The instinct to survive is so strong in humans. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about surviving. You don't have to think about breathing. You don't have to think about your heart working. You don't have to think about other things that kick off to keep you safe. So if you're cold, you'll start shivering because that preserves heat. It's all for survival. Everything your body naturally does is for survival. So as soon as a bit of unsafety kicks in, the feeling of being unsafe kicks in, your instincts will also rush in to keep you safe because they don't know what's going on. Are we dying or are we just a little bit scared? And it's very hard to override this in the first place. But what happens when we want to feel safe is that we go into the survival mode, which is called fight or flight. So fight is obviously you'll just start, protecting yourself, physically or actively. So think of like FOMO trade, revenge trading, that kind of like anger you feel at the charts. That's fight. And flight is where we just want to run away. Now, you might think that like revenge trading is fight, but it is followed by flight. That's why we'll fight, revenge trade, get really angry, and then we'll just go until that account is blown because that gives us the chance to flight. We can run away. It's done. Blown the account. There's nothing more to do here. I can run away. That's why you feel a little bit of relief. When you've got a little bit of profits and you're feeling uncomfortable and scared about will it run, will it not run, will I lose the profits I have, you grab them because of flight. The flight mode is kicked in. Fight or flight is what you are dealing with while you're trading. I know it makes no sense because you're not really a danger. It's not a dangerous situation to you logically. That to your instinct brain, yes, it's a very dangerous situation. So that's what you're up against. Now let's talk about the one thing you're probably doing that's making this even worse. You are most likely trying to solve this expectation gap, this inability, and this isn't your fault that you're doing this, okay? Because in every other situation, this would make sense to do. You are probably trying to solve this with more education about your strategy, about charts. You're trying to learn more strategies, add to your strategy. Everything is about learning more. Okay, now why doesn't it work? Because in everything else we do in life, this does work. Okay, if you're at your job, you just learn more, get better at your job. Why doesn't it work? Why does it make it worse for us? Because when we learn more, we're telling our brain we should now feel even safer. So it's expecting to feel even safer. It ups that level of where unsafety kicks in because it's like good. You're learning more. You're doing something, getting the signals that you're doing something to protect us, and therefore when the safety bar rises, your brain's like we should be more safe. So as soon as it feels a little bit of this, it flies into action. So you're actually making the situation worse by trying to do something that's telling your brain you were going to be safer, and it doesn't fix it because you're not you're not actually dealing with the problem because you haven't understood what the problem is. So you're trying to fix the wrong thing, you're making it worse. This is why over time, and I've been there as well, okay, I also used to go and study more charts, study more strategy, study. It's gotten me through life. So that's what I did for trading. And I just became worse and worse and worse. My rate of blowing accounts became faster and faster and faster. And it is quite sad because I think it's that trajectory, that increasing pace of becoming worse that finally led me to the point where I was like, enough, like this is just getting too painful now. The pain of just doing the same thing over and over was worse than actually going, oh, I better go and actually figure out what's really wrong. Because this shift, so going into this next part of this webinar where I'm going to explain to you the two problems that cause this, the two problems, when you understand these two problems, you can start to fix them, right? But when you start down this path of this webinar, your instinct is already feeling fight or flight. It already wants to, like flight, run away, because what you're now having to kind of admit is almost like you're at square one. Now, you've been working so hard at solving this, and now you're realizing you've been solving the wrong thing and making it worse. Now you've got to start something new. It's horrible. But all the work you've done on the charts, when you can solve these two problems, is going to pay off. Okay, it's not wasted time, it's not wasted effort. It's just wasted because you haven't actually fixed the underlying problem, the execution gap you have not fixed. When you fix the execution gap, you can trade any strategy. All of that work you've done in the charts is finally going to pay off. You're going to get what you expected to get, was to become a better trader. But you have to fix this. There's no way around solving the execution gap, but you've got to solve the real problem. Okay, so let's go into the two things, the two problems, and you have to solve both of these. And one is slightly easier to solve than the other. And one you can actually start working on today by yourself. The other one, you're going to have to work constantly in the background while you're, driving the kids to school, going to work, driving, running, whatever you're doing, you're going to have to be working on this because it affects everything in your life, quite frankly, but especially this. Number one problem is that when you trade, the safety gap opens up. You feel unsafe. And what makes that feeling of being unsafe so bad, so what adds, because remember, we understand now that you feel unsafe, but you can feel unsafe in a lot of areas of life and you can override your instinct, okay? You have the ability to override your instinct. Sometimes you do it well, sometimes you don't do it well. But with trading, it's really important that you do this well. Okay. And what adds to this instinct kicking in and behaving so out of control, out of your control, is that trading is a pressure situation. It's a situation that just is pressurized. There's a lot riding on it, mainly personal things. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to get this wrong. Maybe you're worried about losing money, but you're probably more worried that trading won't work for you and you won't make money, or that you won't get the money back that you've lost. There's lots of things going on. It's not one answer, and it's not the same answer for everyone. It's very personalized. So this is where you need to really think about what kicks off this feeling of unsafety. Now, if you stop trading just on autopilot, don't rush to your chart and just start looking for entries. If you actually followed a more structured approach, you could probably tell where that safety starts to feel starts to get your heart's racing, you're starting to feel a bit unsure, and then that turns into panic. Now, what you want to start doing is noticing when you feel unsure, okay? Because that's the start. Everything doesn't have to descend into panic, because once you're in panic, your instinct has already taken over. It's your instinct that's causing the panic, okay? There's other areas in your life where it's also stressful. Maybe, at work, you've got a big day, you need to go sit an exam at school. It's stressful, but your instinct doesn't kick in and you don't run away or start like just scratching the exam paper or behaving like that. You can accept that this is a normal feeling and then behave in an okay way. But for some reason with trading, we allow this instinct to run away with us. It doesn't have to be like that. You know that there's other areas in your life where you also have pressurized situations, but you can stay in control. Now, what makes that a situation where you can be in control and trading out of control? The answer here and the solution to this problem, the solution to pressure triggering this instinct, is safety, emotional safety. How do we become emotionally safe? And I'm not going to say safety, I'm going to say safer. You don't have to feel completely safe. Like when you go and sit an exam, you can still feel that, but you can still behave okay. Any test, go sit a driving test, you're still feeling that like, but you can still be in control. That's what I'm talking about, safer. How do we make ourselves, our emotional selves, feel safer so that our instinct, our fight or flight instinct, doesn't run away with us? You need to make your emotional self feel safer when you trade, and you do this by expectations and routines. So if you come to your trading desk, instead of just jumping on and throwing your instinct, your fight or flight response into the sudden panic mode, you need to start putting in a routine. So come to your desk, I don't know, tidy it. My routine that I strongly suggest for you is that you learn to meditate 5 minutes, journal, not journal your trades, journal about yourself. Where are you at? Journal. You're preparing. It's called like a trader prepares. You're preparing for your trading day, not because you don't understand your rules, but because you have to prepare your emotional self for your trading day so that your fight or flight doesn't kick in. It's as simple as that. And the best way to make yourself feel safe is through routine, which sets expectations, okay? When you go and sit a test at school, think back to school, there was routine. They started you off when you were quite small with little mini tests, little quizzes, little this, that. Then you sat your first big test. You probably can't even remember it, but you're probably so scared. But they take you in, they sit you down. You get the test paper. Write your name, write the date. Okay, now everyone sit. We're just going to count you down, something. I can't remember what they did, but there was very much a process. It wasn't just you arrive at school and someone throws a test paper in your face and says, quickly write this test, because you would probably panic. They brought you in. They set expectations. You knew a week ago there was going to be a test. You could go and study. You could get ready. You didn't just write the test, okay? You're not doing these very basic things for your trading, and this is where you need to probably make a decision right now. Are you going to start showing up and doing the things for your trading career, for your trading business, or are you not going to? Because if you, instead of racing to your desk to trade, if you actually sat back just for 10 minutes and thought about that question I've just asked you, you would probably be able to think through the way you've behaved and said, yes, I'm not actually showing up in a very professional way. I'm not showing up in a way that makes me feel safe. I'm just racing to hope that I make some money, or hope that this works and I can escape my 9-to-5 job. You're trading on hope, and the way you're behaving is on hope. And you actually need just structured. Everything needs to be structured. Do this for yourself. Solve this problem, and you will trade how you want to trade. All the work you've already done on the charts will pay off. But you need to now's the time that you start spending 90% of your time on trading psychology, and this is it. This is the trading psychology you need to spend your 90% of time on. Okay, so that's just the first one, pressure. You're in a pressurized situation when you trade, and you're very high risk of triggering your instinct for fight or flight unless you make yourself, your inner self, feel safe. And you do that through routine and expectation. Backtesting, practicing your trading also sets expectations. So when you have a loss, you're like, I'm expecting 40 losses out of every 100 trades. 40% of my trades are losses. I expect a loss so often. Expect it and set the routine. Okay, where are we at time-wise? Now I'm going to go through the second problem. And this one is very personal to us. We're all different. We're all different about this one. And this is the one that you're going to probably struggle to solve a little bit more. But you have to figure this out. Everyone solves this in different ways. Maybe you're going to go read some books. Maybe you're going to talk to someone trusted that understands you, understands your training, can talk through these things with them. Maybe you need some more professional help like me. I'm a trading coach. This is what I trade traders on. You decide how you want to fix this, but you have to fix this. The second problem is that along with the execution gap, what opens up during that time, so this pressure, this instinct kicking in, you can now see that there's actually a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces here. What else opens up for you on a personal, very bespoke level, because this is very specific to you, is that your comfort gap opens up. You step out of your comfort zone. And stepping out of our comfort zones, obviously into a pressure situation, triggers a lot of stuff for us. But just in everyday life, we are not comfortable outside of our comfort zones. And our comfort zone is different for everyone. But when you're outside of your comfort zone, you trigger that instinct, that fight or flight instinct is triggered. And that's why when you want to take up something new, running, you have to get up and do some uncomfortable things. I mean, running's literally uncomfortable. So it's emotionally, psychologically uncomfortable. It's outside your comfort zone, but it's also physically uncomfortable. So you can kind of get a bit confused sometimes by the two of them. Getting outside your comfort zone can be physically uncomfortable, but it can also just be emotionally uncomfortable. So sometimes you don't notice, but our instinct to stay in our comfort zone is so high as well. That's why when you want to go running and you set your alarm, it's so much easier to snooze that alarm because you want to stay in your comfort zone. And that's a physical example of a comfort zone as well as an emotional example. But with trading, it's an emotional comfort zone. And so you are stepping outside of your comfort zone, and it's triggering this instinct. Now I want to talk about why is trading outside of your comfort zone. Because trading instinctively, inherently, has what's embedded in it, something called uncertainty. You'll never get rid of the uncertainty in trading, ever. So with the pressure, this feeling unsafe, you can put things in place to feel safer. There's things you can do. You cannot take the uncertainty away from trading, because trading is uncertainty. If we've all read Mark Douglas's book, trading is probability. On over 100 trades, probability-wise, you should know what your numbers should be. Expectation, right? 60% win rate, 60 winning trades over 100 trades, 100 losing trades over 100 trades. But on any single trade, there's uncertainty. You don't know if that's the trade that will win or lose. Uncertainty. You'll never get rid of uncertainty. And comfort zones break down when there's uncertainty involved. We hate uncertainty. As humans, we hate uncertainty. And this is also instinctive. It's tied to safety. It's tied to survival, because uncertainty means we're at risk of not surviving. Back in the caves, if we weren't certain there was food was coming, if we weren't certain that we had shelter, if we weren't certain about certain things, it meant possible death. That's why we've got this instinct to stay alive. And I get it. There's no risk to your life when the uncertainty of, will this trade work, won't it work? But our caveman brains don't know that. And uncertainty is a huge problem for us as humans. Uncertainty is the main driver of anxiety. People that suffer from anxiety, now, unless it's a clinical issue with chemical imbalances, we're not talking about that kind of psychology or psychiatry. Okay, we're not talking about clinical problems. We're talking about behavioral problems, just how we behave because of being human, our fight or flight response, and our past experiences. That creates our psychology, and our psychology is therefore how we behave in situations. It's very common across the board. All of us don't like uncertainty. Some people deal with it better than others, but across the board, unless you can understand the uncertainty and rationalize it to yourself and work on it, uncertainty is terrible for us. And it's usually the line in the sand where you're comfortable here, where there's certainty, where it's known things, and you're uncomfortable over the fence where it's uncertain. That's kind of how you describe a comfort zone. So I call the uncertainty getting outside of your comfort zone. But trading is inherently uncertain. And so you have to figure this out. You have to figure out how to be okay outside of your comfort zone, how to feel comfortable in uncertain situations. These are the two things you have to solve. You can start solving pressure, just the basic pressure situation. Start with a routine expectation. Start training yourself. It's not going to happen overnight just because you tell yourself, oh, this is going to happen. Your brain needs repeat. Every day has to be the same. Have that routine, because your brain will start to be okay with it. And this is why you can't, it's got nothing to, none of this has anything to do with discipline. And so many people I see blowing accounts, and then it's like, tomorrow I promise the discipline's coming. You can't promise your way out of this. You can't force your way out of this. You can't force discipline. You can't force promises. You can't make yourself behave a certain way. You can only train yourself over time. It will take a few weeks, a few months to sort out the pressure, feeling safe. And then you've got to figure out your comfort zone, how to be comfortable with uncertainty, comfortable outside of your comfort zone. And that's a far deeper, there's work you can do. I've talked about some of this work on my other webinars. So this is why I'm, tune in every week. I go through these topics every week in this webinar. just tune in, start, you know, telling your brain all of these things, start absorbing all of these things. You'll start behaving differently. You'll start at least working on the right things. None of this is overnight fixes. And, you know, it's another reason I can point these out all the time. It's not an overnight fix. We've just triggered uncertainty. You want certainty that this will be fixed by noon tomorrow. It won't. It will be fixed. We just don't know when, because I don't know what you're going to do to fix it. But it will be fixed. But we've just opened up the uncertainty. We've opened up the uncomfort, the space beyond your comfort zone. So your instinct already is to fight or flight, run away, maybe go learn another strategy. You're up against this psychology of yours all the time. This is what it is. This is psychology. This is it. But there's so many little moving parts within this, but this is the psychology that you have to work through, and it's working against you all the time. Every decision, you've got a little fight or flight voice that will convince you to do that instead of this, do that instead of the hard thing, do the easy thing, even though it can feel hard. Like learning a new strategy can feel hard. You've got to do all that work, do all the back testing, but it's actually the easy thing to do. But it feels like you're making a hard choice, so you think it's right. The psychology is playing you all the time. So this is the work to do. Guys, I really enjoyed this session, and I hope you have a great Easter weekend. I'm off now for, a long weekend with some friends. Obviously not trading Easter Friday or Easter Monday, and I'm not thinking about trading. What I will think about throughout the entire weekend is my behavior, how I show up, how I, when I'm feeling uncomfortable, not uncomfortable, how I'm, just how I'm thinking. The psychology you can work on all the time. And if you fix this for trading, you fix it for everything else in your life. And it will show up all over the place. If your house is a mess, if your life is a mess, if your relationships are a mess, if your job is a mess, if your life around you is a mess, your trading will also be a mess. You will not be a good trader with your whole life just being a mess because of the psychology. It's you. And when you fix this, you fix your trading and you fix everything. Your whole life improves. So it's a nice little gauger. If you see other things in your life starting to improve, you can start to go, actually, my trading's going to get pretty good soon. Have a great weekend. Don't think about trading. Take some time off. You need rest. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I think it's going to be enormously helpful if you put some of these things into practice. Okay, I'm going to end it there, and have a lovely weekend.